USS Kaskaskia was a Cimarron-class fleet replenishment oiler serving in the United States Navy, named for the Kaskaskia River in Illinois. Kaskaskia was launched the 29th of September 1939 by the Newport News Shipbuilding and AMP Dry Dock Company, Newport News, Virginia, sponsored by Mrs. Joseph P. Kennedy, acquired by the Navy from Esso Oil Company, the 22nd of October 1940, and commissioned the 29th of October 1940. Commander U.S. Gregory in command. Service history. Kaskaskia cleared Boston, Mass. the 19th of November 1940 for Pearl Harbor, arriving the 3rd of January 1941. She transported oil between West Coast ports and Pearl Harbor, making 6 cruises before the 7th of August, when she made an oil run to Johnston Island. The oiler returned to Mare Island the 10th of September for overhaul and repairs. In San Francisco, when the Japanese made their surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Kaskaskia immediately began preparations to join the service force in the Pacific. World War II. Sailing from San Diego the 6th of January 1942, Kaskaskia commenced fueling operations en route before arriving Pago Pago the 20th of January. For the next 6 months she operated out of Nome, refueling the ships engaged in the violent struggle to stem the Japanese advance. The oiler arrived Kodiak, Alaska, the 3rd of July with a cargo of oil and fuel to be used in the Aleutian Islands campaign. She returned to Wilmington, California, loaded oil and aviation gasoline, and continued oil runs to Alaskan ports until she steamed to New Mare late in March 1943. Kaskaskia supplied many ships, increasing the mobility of the fleet during the successful campaigns in the South Pacific. Kaskaskia returned to San Pedro the 28th of July for repairs before resuming her duties at Pearl Harbor the 21st of September. She transported oil between California and Hawaii until she sailed the 25th of November to support the Gilbert Islands campaign. Returning to Pearl Harbor the 10th of December, the oiler resumed her cruises between San Pedro and Hawaii. As the Navy pushed relentlessly toward Japan, Kaskaskia departed Pearl Harbor the 16th of January 1944 to support operations in the Marshall Islands. After the Navy had captured the Kwajalein and Majuro atolls, Kaskaskia supported carrier task forces during the devastating raids on Truk, the Marianas Islands, and Palau Islands in February and March. The oiler continued fueling operations in the Marshall Islands area until she cleared Majuro the 6th of June to fuel destroyers and destroyer escorts in the invasion of Saipan. Throughout June and July, Kaskaskia remained on hand, assisting the fleet to take Saipan, Guam, and Tinian, important supply areas in the future campaign for the Philippines. As the Navy fought toward the Philippines, Admiral Nimitz decided to take the Palau Islands as a staging area for aircraft and ships during the invasion of Leyte. Kaskaskia departed Manus on the 4th of September with a task group bound for an assault on Peleliu. She operated in the Palau area until returning Manus the 8th of October. Her stay was a brief one, however, as she sailed the 10th of October for Leyte. Prior to the actual landings, she fueled units of the fleet, continuing this vital duty until a beachhead had been established. The oiler returned to Lithia the 23rd of October and made another fueling run to the Philippine area early in November. After an overhaul at San Diego December 1944 through February 1945, Kaskaskia arrived Kwajalein the 11th of March to service the fleet. The oiler cleared Lithia the 30th of March for the fueling area off Okinawa, the last major step before the Japanese homeland itself. Once again the oilers, the unsung heroes of the war, stood by refueling the many ships engaged in the irresistible assault from the sea on Okinawa. Kaskaskia was relieved of fueling duties off Okinawa, only to be summoned for another important service. She departed Ulithi the 3rd of July to refuel units of the carrier task forces launching raids on the Japanese islands of Honshu and Hokkaido. When the Japanese surrendered, Kaskaskia steamed into Tokyo Bay the 10th of September with ships of the occupation forces. She continued refueling operations in Japan, China, and Formosa for an entire year before arriving San Pedro the 28th of September 1946. Korean War. Between 1947 and 1950 she ferried oil and aviation gasoline from the west coast to the far eastern naval bases in the mid-Pacific. When North Korean troops invaded South Korea, the United States accepted the challenge and ordered its forces to defend the embattled peninsula. Kaskaskia cleared San Diego the 16th of September to operate out of Sasebo. During October she entered the heavily mined waters off Wonsan, fueling ships blockading and bombarding that key port. During December she arrived off Hungnam to service ships engaged in evacuation operations in that area. Throughout the harsh winter months, Kaskaskia continued vital fueling missions between Japan and Korea. During the United Nations counteroffensive in the spring of 1951, she also stood by for fueling operations. The oiler returned to Long Beach, California, the 27th of August for overhaul and operations along the Pacific coast. She sailed from the Second Korean Tour January 1952, arriving Sasebo on the 22nd of January to refuel the ships engaged in the Korean War. In addition to services in Korea, she also supplied units in Japan, Okinawa, and Formosa before returning Long Beach the 31st of July. Overhaul and training preceded her third Korean deployment from the 27th of December to July 1953. On this tour she supported ships engaged in fire support operations. Returning home the 17th of August, Kaskaskia underwent overhaul. She then sailed again for the Far East the 4th of January 1954. Operated out of Sasebo and returning San Francisco the 12th of October. Following coastal operations, the oiler was placed out of commission in reserve the 8th of April 1955. Kaskaskia was transferred to MSDS the 8th of January 1957, and operated in that capacity with a Navy crew until the 21st of October 1957 when she decommissioned and was turned over to the Maritime Administration. 10 December. Kaskaskia was struck from the Navy list the 2nd of January 1959. 1960s. The Berlin crisis of 1961 necessitated the reactivation of ships and Kaskaskia was reinstated the 8th of September. Following overhaul and alterations she recommissioned at Hoboken, New Jersey, the 6th of December. Captain John D. Howell in command. After shakedown operations in the Caribbean, the oiler arrived Mayport, Florida, the 1st of May 1962. Throughout the summer she engaged in exercises off the Florida coast, and sailed to the Azores to participate in Project Mercury, manned orbital flights. She was in company with US Kurtesh during the latter's recovery of astronaut Walter Schirra the 3rd of October, demonstrating the large role of the Navy in space operations. Kaskaskia returned to Mayport the 22nd of October and 2 days later sailed to participate in the Cuban blockade. President John F. Kennedy ordered the blockade when the Soviet Union tried to plant offensive missiles only 90 miles from the United States. The naval pressure persuaded the Soviet Union to withdraw the missiles, easing the crisis. The oiler returned to operations out of Mayport the 21st of November. She cleared Mayport the 5th of February 1963 for a 6-month Mediterranean cruise to refuel ships of the U.S. 6th Fleet, then resumed refueling exercises off Florida for the rest of the year. During 1964, Kaskaskia engaged in fueling operations and exercises off Florida and in the Caribbean, constantly seeking improved methods to increase the mobility of the fleet. On 6 January 1965, Kaskaskia sailed for another 6th Fleet deployment. While she was operating in the Mediterranean, her crew worked day and night delivering over 19 million gallons of fuel to 169 ships. Kaskaskia returned to Mayport the 7th of June 1965. She operated primarily along the Atlantic coast and in the Caribbean into 1967. Highlights of this period were service to ships patrolling off the coast of riot-torn Santo Domingo in the summer of 1965, and participation in the recovery team for an unmanned Apollo program spaceflight in February 1966. Kaskaskia was decommissioned for the final time in December 1969 and sold for scrap in September 1970. Kaskaskia received 9 battle stars for World War II and 7 stars for Korean War service.